Assalamu alaikum, adab, good morning, sat sri akal, namaskar. My name is Sayyid Qaswar Abbas. Today, I'm going to talk about United Nations Sustainable Goal number 16, people, justice, and strong institutions. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. Definition and explanation. As far as the 2030 agenda is concerned, Goal 16 is devoted to the promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, the provision of access to justice for all, and to the establishment of effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. The strengthening of the framework to finance sustainable development and the means of implementation for 2030 agenda is ensured by the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. The Addis Agenda is the outcome document adopted at the Third International Conference on Financing for Development in July 2015 and endorsed by the General Assembly in its resolution 69 by 313 of 27 July 2015. With the adoption of Future We Want, the outcome document of the Rio Plus 20 conference held from 20 to 22 June 2012, member states decided to establish a universal intergovernmental high-level political forum building on the strengths, experiences, resources, and inclusive participation modalities of the Commission on Sustainable Development and subsequently replacing the Commission. The high level political forum should follow up on the implementation of sustainable development and should avoid overlap with existing structures, bodies, and entities in a cost effective manner. The high level political forum on sustainable development is today the main United Nations platform on sustainable development. It provides political leadership, guidance, and recommendations. It follows up and reviews the implementation of sustainable development commitments and the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. It addresses new and emerging challenges, promotes the science policy interface, and enhances the integration of economic, social, and environmental dimensions of sustainable development. Framework principles on human rights and the environment. The 16 framework principles set out basic obligations of states under human rights law as they relate to the enjoyment of a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Number one, states should ensure a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment in order to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. Number two, states should respect, protect, and fulfill human rights in order to ensure a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Number three, states should prohibit discrimination and ensure equal and effective protection against discrimination in relation to the enjoyment of a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Number four, states should provide a safe and enabling environment in which individuals, groups, and organs of society that work on human rights or environmental issues can operate free from threats, harassment, intimidation, and violence. Five, states should respect and protect the rights to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly in relation to environmental matters. Six, states should provide for education and public awareness on environmental matters. Seven, states should provide public access to environmental information by collecting and disseminating information and by providing affordable, effective, and timely access to information to any person upon request. Eight, to avoid undertaking or authorizing actions with environmental impacts that interfere with the full enjoyment of human rights, states should require the prior assessment of the possible environmental impacts of proposed projects and policies, including their potential effects on enjoyment of human rights. Nine, states should provide for and facilitate public participation in decision making related to the environment and take the views of the public into account in the decision making process. 10. States should provide for access to effective remedies for violation of human rights and domestic laws relating to the environment. 11. States should establish and maintain substantive environmental standards that are non discriminatory, non retrogressive, and otherwise respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. 12. States should ensure the effective enforcement of their environmental standards against public and private actors. 13. States should cooperate with each other to establish, maintain, and enforce effective international legal frameworks in order to prevent, reduce, and remedy transboundary and global environmental harm that interferes with the full enjoyment of human rights. 14. States should take additional measures to protect the rights of those who are most vulnerable to or at particular risk from environmental harm, taking into account their needs, risks, and capacities. 15. States should ensure that they comply with their obligations to indigenous people and members of traditional communities, including by a. Recognizing and protecting their rights to the lands, territories, and resources that they have traditionally owned, occupied, or used. B. Consulting with them and obtaining their free, prior, and informed consent before relocating them, or take or approving any other measures that may affect their lands, territories, and resources. C. Respecting and protecting their traditional knowledge and practices in relation to the conservation and sustainable use of their lands, territories, and resources. D. Ensuring that they fairly and equitably share the benefits from activities relating to their lands, territories, or resources. States should respect, protect, and fulfill human rights in the actions they take to address environmental challenges and pursue sustainable development. Integrated decision making and participation. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development focuses on decision making with particular reference to participation of vulnerable groups such as women, SDG Target 5.5, developing countries, including African countries, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, small island developing states, and middle income countries, SDG Target 10.6, to the decision making process. Furthermore, SDG Target 16.7 aims to ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision making at all levels. The 2030 Agenda also highlights in its paragraph 48 the importance indicators have for decision making. In the Rio Plus 20 conference outcome document, The Future We Want, paragraph 14 recognizes that opportunities for people to influence their lives and future, participate in decision making, and voice their concerns are fundamental for sustainable development, and reaffirm, respectively, in paragraph 19 the continued need for the full and effective participation of all countries, in particular developing countries, in global decision making, and in paragraph 31 the commitments to ensure women's equal rights, access and opportunities for participation and leadership in the economy, society, and political decision making. An important role is also recognized to major groups and other stakeholders. In the outcome document of The Future We Want, member states agree to work more closely with major groups and other stakeholders and encourage their active participation as appropriate in processes that contribute to decision making, planning, and implementation of policies and programs for sustainable development at all levels. As per paragraph 43. Paragraph 276 of The Future We Want acknowledges the need to facilitate informed policy decision making on sustainable development issues and, in this regard, to strengthen the science policy interface. Whereas paragraph 279 reiterates participation and representation of men and women scientists and researchers from developing and developed countries in processes related to global environmental and sustainable development assessment and monitoring, with the purpose of enhancing national capabilities and the quality of research for policy and decision making processes. Both the World Summit on Sustainable Development (WSSD) in 2002 and the Commission on Sustainable Development emphasized the importance of information for sound decision making. The Johannesburg Plan of Implementation (JPOI) focuses on paragraph 7D on women's access and full participation to decision making. Paragraph 19 takes into consideration the importance of integrating sustainable development into decision making processes at all levels, whereas paragraph 86 describes the importance of consolidating the reform process of existing financial systems in order to provide for the effective participation of developing countries in the international economic decision making processes. Furthermore, the need to improve policy and decision making at all levels, and in particular through an improved collaboration between science and policymakers, is stressed in paragraph 109E. Chapter 8 of Agenda calls on countries to improve or restructure the decision making process so that consideration of socio-economic and environmental issues is fully integrated and a broader range of public participation assured. It also calls on countries to adopt national strategies for sustainable development (NSDS) that should build upon and harmonize the various sectoral, economic, social, and environmental policies and plans that are operating in the country. Furthermore, Chapter 40 of Agenda 21 focuses on information for decision making and emphasizes that in sustainable development, everyone is a user and provider of information considered in the broad sense. That includes data, information, experience, and knowledge. The need for information arises at all levels, from that of senior decision maker at the national and international levels to the grassroots and individual levels. Violence against children. The protection of children from all form of violence is a fundamental right enshrined in the UN Convention on Rights of Child. The inclusion of a specific target, SDG 16.2, in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development to end all forms of violence against children gives renewed impetus towards the realization of the right of every child to live free from fear, neglect, abuse, and exploitation. Several other SDG targets address specific forms of violence and harm towards children, such as child marriage and female genital mutilation, Target 5.3, and the eradication of child labor, including the recruitment and use of child soldiers, Target 8.7. To gain a better understanding of the nature, extent, and causes of violence against children and of measures designed to increase their protection, the United Nations conducted a comprehensive study in 2006 with clear recommendations for action. The Secretary General appointed a special representative on violence against children to monitor progress on implementation of the recommendation of the study and ensure its effective follow up. 1 billion children globally experience some form of emotional, physical, or sexual violence every year. And one child dies as a result of violence every 5 minutes. Although of epidemic proportions, violence against children often remains hidden and socially condoned. Violence against children knows no boundaries of culture, class, education, income, or ethnic origin. It takes place in institutions designed for their care and protection, in schools, online, and also within the home. Most girls and boys who are exposed to violence live in isolation, loneliness, and fear, and do not know where to turn for help, especially when the perpetrator is someone close and on whom they depend for their protection and well being. Younger children are especially at risk from violence as they are less able to speak up and seek support, and it can cause irreversible damage to their development. Gender disability, poverty, and national or ethnic origin are some of the risk factors that can place children at high risk of violence. Peer on peer violence by children is also a concern, with studies showing that between 25 to 50% of the children have been victims of bullying. The growth in cyberbullying is equally troubling, with its harmful messages spread fast and far and fueled by perpetrators' anonymity. Violence has serious and long lasting consequences for its victims and can have a major impact on the health, development, and school performance of the children. It also slows social progress by generating huge economic costs, hindering sustainable development, and eroding human capital. According to one study, the global cost of violence against children could be as high as 7 trillion US dollars per year. Violence against children can be prevented, and there has been real progress over recent years, as highlighted by 2013 Global Survey on Violence Against Children and the annual reports of the Special Representative of the Secretary General to the General Assembly. In support of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda targets, new partnerships and alliances are forming. New international standards on children's protection from violence, including trafficking, sexual abuse, and exploitation, have been adopted. A large number of states have adopted a national comprehensive policy agenda on violence prevention and response and enacted legislation to prohibit physical, mental, and sexual violence. And to safeguard the rights of child victims, information campaigns have raised awareness of the negative impact of violence on child development and of positive practices to prevent its occurrence and children's protection from bullying, domestic violence, sexual violence, and harmful practices are being tackled through new global initiatives. There is also increased investment in generating sound evidence on the scale and nature of violence against children and on effective strategies to prevent it, and in promoting and monitoring progress towards its elimination. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development presents us with an historic opportunity to place the protection of children at the heart of the policy actions at every nation and to build a world where all children everywhere enjoy freedom from fear and from violence in all its forms. 2019 represents a strategic milestone in this journey. Firstly, the High Level Political Forum, HLPF, in July will assess progress on the implementation of the SDGs under the theme Empowering People and Ensuring Inclusiveness and Equality, and will review the targets related to violence against children under Goal 16, as well as those under Goal 4, education, and 8, decent work and economic growth. Secondly, in September, world leaders will gather under the first General Assembly Summit to review progress made in the implementation of entire 2030 agenda, providing high-level political guidance for the second phase of the implementation of the 2030 agenda. Thirdly, in November, the UN General Assembly will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Convention of Rights of the Child, CRCC, the most widely ratified UN treaty. 2019 also marks the 10th anniversary of the mandate of the Special Representative of UN Secretary General on the Violence Against Children. 2019, therefore, provides an important opportunity to gain a comprehensive picture of how far we have come in ensuring children's safety and protection, what gaps remain, and how to best accelerate progress to end all violence against children by 2030. National Sustainable Development Strategies, NSDS. The concept of National Sustainable Development Strategy (NSDS) was proposed in 1992 in Agenda 21, Goal 8.7, where countries were called upon to integrate economic, social, and environmental objectives into one strategically focused blueprint for action at the national level. The NSDS should be developed through the widest possible participation, and it should be based on a thorough assessment of the current situation and initiatives. In the program for future implementation of Agenda 21, adopted at the 19th special session of the General Assembly, 23rd to 28 June 1997, member states reaffirmed the importance of NSDS and set a target of 2002 for formulation and elaboration of NSDS that reflect the contribution and responsibilities of all interested parties. However, by 2002, based on national reports received from governments, only about 85 countries had developed some form of national strategies, and the nature and effectiveness of these strategies varied considerably from country to country. The Johannesburg Plan of Implementation (JPOI), adopted at the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development (WSSD), through paragraph 162b, recommitted member states to take immediate steps to make progress in the formulation and elaboration of national strategies for sustainable development and to begin their implementation by 2005. During the preparatory process for 2002 WSSD, the International Forum on NSDS was held in Accra, Ghana in 2001, which led to the launch of the guidance in preparing a national sustainable development strategy. It defined National Sustainable Development Strategy (NSDS) as a coordinated, participatory, and iterative process of thoughts and actions to achieve economic, environmental, and social objectives in a balanced and integrated manner. Most importantly, NSDS is a call for an institutional change. It aims at a transition from the traditional static putting a plan on paper exercise towards the establishment of an adaptive system that can continuously improve. It should be a process which encompasses situation analysis, formulation of policies and action plans, implementation, monitoring, and regular review. It is a cyclical and iterative process of planning, participation, and action in which the emphasis is on managing progress towards sustainability goals rather than producing a plan as an end product. Every country needs to determine for itself how best to approach the preparation and implementation of its national sustainable development strategy, depending upon the prevailing political, historical, cultural, ecological circumstances. A blueprint approach for national sustainable development strategies is neither possible nor desirable. The particular label applied to a national sustainable development strategy is not important as long as the underlying principles characterizing a national sustainable development strategy are adhered to and that economic, social, and environmental objectives are balanced and integrated. Today, when incorporating the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 SDGs into national context, although countries do not necessarily label them as national sustainable development strategies, all the underlying core principles are deeply embedded in the national implementation of SDGs worldwide. As seen at voluntary national review at the high level political forum on sustainable development, issues such as country ownership and strong political commitment, the integration of economic, social, and environmental objectives across sectors, territories, and generations, broad participation and effective partnerships, the development of capacity and enabling environment, as well as the mobilization of means of implementations remain at the center of policy debate at all levels. The role of businesses. Businesses thrive in the peaceful environments, which effective institutions where operating costs are predictable and working environments are stable. Failure to implement responsible business practices can result in additional costs and risks, financial, legal, reputational, to the business itself, and can exacerbate tensions and instability in society and undermine the rule of law. Corruption causes inefficiencies in the markets because it renders transaction costs uncertain, is anti-competitive, and hampers businesses' ability to comply with human rights and other obligations. By contrast, a responsible business can, through its core business strategies, strategic social environment, public policy engagement, and collective action, make meaningful contributions to lasting peace, development, and prosperity while ensuring long term business success. Among other things, businesses can commit to working with governments and civil society to eliminate corruption in all its forms and to support strengthening the rule of law. By focusing on the ways responsible business contributes to advancing these three dimensions of sustainable development, conducting business responsibly in high risk areas, fighting corruption in respect and support for the rule of law. Business can contribute to more peaceful and inclusive societies and support effective and accountable institutions. Key business themes addressed by this SDG: effective, accountable, and transparent governance, compliance with laws and regulations, anti corruption, public access to information, physical and economic displacement, inclusive decision making. Examples of key business actions and solutions. The below examples are non exhaustive and some may be more relevant to certain industries than to others. Comply with laws and seek to meet international standards. Require and support business partners to do the same. Commit to and implement conflict sensitive, lawful, and transparent operational policies and practices, including on human resources, public and corporate procurement, and in the value chain more generally. Conduct risk and impact assessment to identify and mitigate risks of contributing to corruption, violence, and conflict, and weakening of the rule of law, and identify opportunities for positive impacts. Measure and report on implementation progress, including on operations in high risk areas. Engage in public private dialogue, partnerships, and collective actions in conflict prevention, peacekeeping, peace building, anti corruption, and the rule of law. SDG 16 Islamic Perspective. Peaceful, just, and inclusive societies are necessary to achieve the sustainable development goals. People everywhere need to be free of fear from all forms of violence and feel safe as they go about their lives, whatever their ethnicity or faith. In order to advance the SDGs, we need effective and inclusive public institutions that can deliver quality education in healthcare, fair economic policies, and inclusive environmental protection. Today, 20 million people are refugees. Over 41 million people are internally displaced, and at least 4 million people are stateless. Therefore, it is important that governments, civil society, and communities work together to implement lasting solutions to reduce violence, deliver justice, combat corruption, and ensure inclusive participation at all times. Freedom to express views in private and in public must be guaranteed. People must be able to contribute to decisions that affect their lives. Laws and policies must be applied without any form of discrimination. Disputes need to be resolved through functioning political and justice systems. National and local institutions must be accountable and need to be in place to deliver basic services to families and communities equitably and without the need for bribes. The notions of peace, justice, fairness, and strong institutions are inherent to the Islamic vision. The Quran asserts those who have faith and do not impair it by injustice, for them there is peace and they are the really guided ones. Surah Al An'am, Ayah 82. The absence of justice cannot but lead ultimately to misery and destruction. Surah Al-Taha, Ayah 11. Quran equates the unwarranted killing of even a single individual, irrespective of whether she is a Muslim or a non-Muslim, with the killing of the whole mankind, and the saving of a single life with the saving of the whole mankind. Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayah 32. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, AD 728 and 1328 death, emphasizes that justice towards everything and everyone is an imperative for everyone, and injustice is prohibited to everything and everyone. Injustice is absolutely not permissible, irrespective of whether it is to a Muslim or a non-Muslim or even to an unjust person. Strong institutions, good governance. Adala, justice and fairness, is the fundamental principle of good governance. The importance of adala in governance has been revealed in verse 4-58 of Holy Quran. Adala is very crucial in a society riddled with potential conflicts of interest. Islam encourages those who are entrusted amana to deal with people with injustice or adala. Any kind of discrimination based on considerations other than required competencies stand in the way of adala or fairness. It is said that nepotism stands in the way of good governance. At the same time, it is very common with witness Islamic societies, organizations being riddled with nepotism and conflict of interest. Nepotism essentially employs the practice among those with power and influence of favoring relatives or friends and breeds corruption. As the Quran states, truly the best of men for you to employ is the best man who is strong and trustworthy. Surah Al-Qasas, Ayah 26. Further, the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "He whoever hires a person and knows that there is still one who is more qualified than him has betrayed Allah and His Prophet and the Muslims." Islam rules out any form of discrimination based on race, color, sex, nationality. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ is reported to have said, "The only basis for preference between an Arab and a non-Arab, a white and black, and a male and female is piety." Shu'ab al-Iman. Holy Quran says, "O you who believe, enter perfectly in Islam by obeying all the rules and regulations of the Islamic religion and follow not the footstep of shaitan," yani Satan. "Verily, he is to you a plain enemy." Al-Baqarah, the cow, ayah 208. "And make not Allah's name an excuse in your oaths against your doing good and acting piously and making peace among mankind. And Allah is all hearer, all knower." Al-Baqarah, the cow, ayah 224. "Whosoever intercedes for a good cause will have the reward thereof, and whosoever intercedes for an evil cause will have a share in its burden. And Allah is ever all able to do, and also an all witness to everything." An-Nisa, the woman, ayah 85. SDG 16 targets: significantly reduce the forms of violence and related deaths rates everywhere. End abuse, exploitation, trafficking, and all forms of violence against and torture of children. Promote the rule of law at the national and international levels, and ensure equal access to justice for all. By 2030, significantly reduce illicit financial and arms flow, strengthen the recovery and return of stolen assets, and combat all forms of organized crime, substantially reduce corruption and bribery in all their forms, develop effective, accountable, and transparent institutions at all levels, ensure responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision making at all levels, broaden and strengthen the participation of developing countries in the institutions of global governance. By 2030, provide legal identity for all, including birth registration, ensure public access to information, and protect fundamental freedom in accordance with national legislation and international agreements. Strengthen relevant national institutions, including through international cooperation for building capacity at all levels, in particular in developing countries, to prevent violence and combat terrorism and crime. Promote and enforce non discriminatory laws and policies for sustainable development. That concludes my today's talk, ladies and gentlemen. I am profoundly thankful to all of you for listening to me, as well as passing it on to others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow His guidance upon you all and grant you what's best suited for you. Allah Hafiz, till next time.